Hello, everyone. It's Tracy Cromwell, your integrative nutrition health coach, and it's Tough Love Tuesday. And I have a very special guest with me today. I have Lexs Harris, and I'm gonna. Oh goodness, I'm all nervous. Martinkosky with me today, and Lex, I know you because I went to school with your mom. So, yes, and I asked you to be on my show because I'm much an advocate for, as you know, I'm an author and I wrote the book Your Personal Journey with Food, and I've gone through my own aspect of learning about food, how it affects the brain and the body. And you are a freshman in high school. You said you were 14 years old. And you already know so much about this. I was not even thinking about at your age. And so, yeah, Lex, tell us a bit about you and how you got so excited to learn about food and how it affects you, the body, and the brain.
Well, I I wanted to lose weight, so I started researching things, and I eventually lost weight. But I've always been interested in the body and neuroscience and stuff like that. So I started researching about that, and I kind of just went down the rabbit hole of food and nutrition and its effect on the planet. And
Mhm.
it it it, it seems more than just something that you eat now. There's a lot more implications with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like learning what is food, quote unquote, right? So
Yeah.
before you took that journey, what was food to you? Um,
I don't know.
and
I didn't really think much about it. It was
Mhm.
kind of there, and I guess I fell in the hole of big big food companies and ate what they were selling, like
Mhm.
processed foods and such.
Mhm. So you were, um, realizing that you were part of a big industry that maybe you had no idea you were part of, correct? Or something like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah,
Mhm.
now I'm a big advocate for making things from scratch. I make my parents crazy sometimes because I make a lot of things from scratch.
I love it.
I'm
What
making
are Oh, go ahead.
I'm fermenting sourdough bread right now. I'll bake it tomorrow.
Nice. That's my favorite. I love sourdough bread.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you started going down this rabbit hole and you discovered the big industry, the food industry, one thing I wrote about in my book was, we can choose how we want to participate. Once our eyes are open, how do we want to participate? So how did you feel navigating that, going from the way you used to eat and then talking with your parents about it and making change within your home? How did that all go down?
Um, well, at first it was about cutting calories, and then it became eating more whole foods and such.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I personally have an ethical problem with the way animals are raised these days for such
Mm-hmm.
a large market.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not only bad for the animals, it's bad for the environment and the people who raise them. Um, and I can go more into depth than that.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah. Yep.
but so um, they're sorry.
You're
Um,
fine.
so in the chicken industry, I know for a fact there's they control the distribution of chicks, so the chickens to farmers, but it's also a competitive system among the farmers. So um, the more chickens they raise for slaughter, the more money they make. And
Mm-hmm.
but the chicken company controls the amount of chickens they get and essentially controls how much money they make. And they're put in debt the moment they buy a hen house from that chicken company. So they're under the thumb of the big chicken company and can't get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Chickens are bred with their legs break and they have cardiovascular problems
Mm-hmm.
because us consumers want more breast meat.
Yeah, they commercial raised chicken is injected with growth hormones and poorly treated. And so it sounds like to
I
me,
think
go ahead.
aren't hormones or never mind.
I know, like they want the chicken breasts to become really big, and sometimes these chickens they can't even stand up because the breasts are so proportionately larger than they're supposed to be. And if you look at a grass-fed raised chicken, you know, who's eating it's the food is supposed to eat and all this, and its range, you know, it's actually a free range. They will the proportions of that chicken will be completely different
Yeah.
from you know, and yeah, so it was a big eye opener for me when I started really looking at the industry. And that was a pill I didn't want to swallow, to be honest. I didn't want to have to look at it. And so what intrigued me and what made me want to talk with you again is that you are 14 years old and you're looking at it already, you know, and I didn't want to look at it. I would try, but I just didn't want to, and then I didn't want to change my behavior based on what I knew about that. Yeah. So I think as we think about ourselves as humans on the planet, that we are integrated with this planet, right? We
Yeah.
aren't. We aren't. We aren't just sitting here on top of it and not having impact. We
Yeah.
are totally integrated. Yeah.
And it doesn't feel natural to confine animals to a tiny space for their whole life. That
Yeah.
especially when you consider its impact on the environment. And
Mhm.
that's really what got me because I feel like you can't try and convince people that you shouldn't eat commercially raised meat because of your own ethical values. You can't force that upon people. But
Mhm.
if you can show that it contributes a lot to deforestation and climate change, you have more of
Mhm.
an argument. So I've kind of focused on that and
Okay. Mhm.
educating people.
That's great. What are your thoughts in terms of, you're 14 years old and, what would you like to see happen with the food industry so that, as you get older, you have some hope as to what's going to happen with your world.
Well, I think it's about personal. I mean, you can do a lot as an individual because
Mhm.
I mean, we live in a capitalist society. So if consumers want grass-fed beef and sustainably raised eggs and such, it'll be provided. So you can do your own part and buy local beef and eggs and such.
Mhm.
Um, but also the USDA, it's designed to both help farmers sell their goods, but also set nutrition guidelines, which is a big conflict of interest
Mhm.
because it seems like those things don't go together because they're trying to
Right.
both promote farmers' goods and regulate them.
Mhm.
And usually, when you promote, you don't want to focus on the negative parts of that industry because that's not a good way to conduct business.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Right. And we can look at that and um, you and I were chatting a little bit before this, but you were talking about your thoughts on how to restructure. What are your thoughts on restructuring, Department of Agriculture that would be more beneficial, for everybody?
Well, I think there should be a separate area for setting nutrition guidelines,
Hmm.
and there and another place for marketing for helping, but yeah, for marketing farmers' goods. But even then,
Mm-hmm.
It's farmer. Yeah, there's a lot of politics to go along with it because
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were talking about Monsanto and the soybeans and corn,
yeah,
right?
those are
Mm-hmm.
heavily subsidized crops by the government,
Mm-hmm.
and it's part of the reason we have mad cow disease because
Mm-hmm.
it's so cheap to feed cows and even salmon. We feed salmon corn in farms, um, and so they get degenerative neurological disorders like
Mm-hmm.
mad cow disease.
It's
That
interesting. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, that make us sick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we think about it, if a body continually consumes food that it's not meant to consume, what happens is called chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation, chronic disease can happen. And so, whereas with humans, when we eat whole foods, foods that our bodies are meant to digest, we are healthier. So if we look at an animal, it's supposed to like cows are supposed to eat grass. Grass, that's their diet.
Yeah, and
And when we have them eat corn and all these other things, and you were saying also sometimes their own waste. Is that what you? Yeah,
yeah, like animal byproduct. That
byproduct,
happens a lot of.
animal byproducts. Then their bodies can become inflamed and chronically ill, and then that is what's on our table. So it's like we have to realize we are a part of a cycle, and if we can. There's so many wonderful ways for sustainable farming that if maybe it's one farm at a time, or we can start to get people to understand in the government that's a healthier way to feed our our humans and take care of our planet. Yeah.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the bottom line is if meat is cheaper and it's and it's what people want,
Mm-hmm.
it'll it'll dominate the market over grass fed. But there are all sorts of co-ops now kind of bringing
Mm-hmm.
down the price of
Yes.
grass fed beef and sustainably raised chickens. And there's all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of online resources for that.
That is so true. Let's talk about because you can do the same thing with produce, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. So let's talk about. We were talking a little bit about again what food we eat and how it's been grown in terms of plants. And so you brought up Monsanto. So what are your thoughts on Monsanto?
Well, they kind of oppress small soybean farmers.
Mhm.
Um, they've I don't know the exact specifics, but they've taken um, soybean farmers that refuse to use their soybeans to or spray their crops with Roundup, their
Mhm.
pesticides, um, and it's it's just I don't the oppression is not good. It's just perpetual.
I this is where you
I'm
know we
not
oh go ahead.
I'm not as educated in pesticides as I am in other things.
Mhm.
I'll be honest there.
Yeah. Well, when we think about it, I would like to ask anyone watching this, does it make sense that our food is sprayed with a toxic pesticide that, just because it doesn't kill us right this minute, but it's been shown over and over that it is harmful for our bodies. Does it make sense that that is the way our food is grown? And then that pesticide goes into the soil. It kills all of the living beings, that we need in our soil and depletes our soil. Does that make sense? And so that's one thing I had to finally ask myself, does this make sense? I felt like I was in the Matrix. I had to take the pill, it's the red pill, I think. And I woke up, does this make sense? And I think if we can get people to ask that question, why are we allowing this to happen? And why are we I don't know what I want to say here. I feel like I'm in a petri dish
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the end, it comes back to hurt us and all these
Mhm.
bad agricultural practices.
The reality is, it doesn't make any sense that we are eating food that we have to go on a website and look up the Clean 15, or we got to look up a website, the Dirty Dozen, and that we have to pay so much more for food that's not got toxic poison on it, and yeah.
And yeah, it's sad that the heavily processed foods like a hamburger at McDonald's is cheaper and has more calories than
Mhm.
like a head of cauliflower or broccoli,
Yeah.
the foods that nourish us.
And that's the hard part. the Because that's the other thing, is the access to healthy food is not equal.
Yeah, food deserts
It's
and
not.
yeah.
Yeah. So depending on how much a family earns, they can't afford an organic apple.
Yeah.
They have to buy the one that's been covered with a pesticide, or they have to buy the boxed food that has absolutely no nutritional value that the body can use, because the pricing of real food is despairingly too high,
Yeah.
and that's causing a huge problem.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it's an interesting world. So let's talk about you a little bit. So what is your favorite thing to make? I know you're making sourdough bread for tomorrow.
Oh, I don't know. I like to bake a lot, but I also like to cook. Um,
Mhm.
I like to make croissants a lot.
Ah,
They're
so how do you make them then? If that's like a bread. So tell me how you do it.
so it's a laminated dough. So essentially, I make a bread dough and then I put a butter block and I do all sorts of folds
Oh my God.
to create layers. And speaking of that, I'm of the belief if you make it from scratch from Whole Foods, you should eat it. I mean, because if you read the ingredients label on like a packaged croissant, the flour, I have the luxury of sourcing good flour and good butter, like
Mhm.
Kerrygold butter and organic flour and such.
Mhm.
But you won't find any of that in processed foods, which is why I'm a big advocate for making you can make eat anything you want as long as you make it from scratch.
I
Which
love
I
that.
know things it might not be the most nutrient dense thing, but at least you know what went into it.
That's one thing that I absolutely love now that I do cook versus and I create things from ingredients that are in my cupboard. Um, it has a whole different feel when it's on my plate.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's it took me a while too. So I'm speaking to the adults here to want to start cooking again and taking the time to do it. And once I figured that out, how to do it, it was something that I could do more efficiently and enjoy, um, and start feeling better.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I really like to make croissants and sourdough bread
Mhm, mhm.
and which is fermented. I have my own starter and stuff.
So
Um,
explain to everyone what that means. You have your own starter and all of that.
so a s you've seen like granulated yeast that you can buy at the store. Essentially what a starter is, it's wild yeast that comes from the air and in the flour. And at least my starter is equal parts flour and water. That's all you need.
Mhm,
And I do a mix of different flours and you let it sit and ferment and you feed it daily and you catch yeast and then you can use it to leaven bread or raise it up. That's how you get the air pockets. And it also has a benefit of kind of digesting the starch in the bread, and it's good for your microbiome. But that's
Mhm.
there's arguments for why.
I love the microbiome. The microbiome wants to love us back.
And it's
We need to love it too.
yeah.
So is it so let's talk about that. So yeah, what we eat, since you brought up the microbiome, what we consume will eventually grow certain organisms in our digestive tract, our microbiome, to digest that food. So depending on what we eat, that's the kind of bacteria and gut friends that we have in our gut. So we can have a microbiome that wants to eat processed food. It wants the sugar. It wants all of those things that are overall long time over, with our body. Our body doesn't know how to handle them. Or we can have a microbiome that feeds on whole foods and, greens and homemade bread by Lexs and all that kind of stuff. And and so learning how to feed that and populate that microbiome is really important.
Yeah, and it's really closely connected to your brain as well. All the microorganisms and fermented foods and fibrous foods are good for that. And fats, healthy fat.
Yeah, so let's talk about that too. Sometimes we think we're just going to we're going to go ahead and eat something and it just goes through our system and then it goes out the other end. But that's not the reality. It programs our body, right?
Yeah.
It programs our body to do things and our brain to feel a certain way and all of that.
Yeah, I feel a lot better when I eat things like quinoa and lentils and salmon and avocado and
yeah. Was it hard to transition though? I know you had the goal to lose weight, but did you have any kind of kickback on your, did you miss anything while you were going through that, of food, having to give up, or what was your process there?
Well, I mean, I cut out a lot of stuff and I just said no to all of it. And that wasn't very healthy for a while. And I've realized eating a cookie every once in a while isn't going to kill me, especially if I make it myself and my own caloric needs. But that, yeah.
So you had done, you said no to almost everything to start, and then you realized that just wasn't.
Well, to what I considered bad, like I wouldn't eat butter, but I'd eat olive oil. Just because I had this certain connotation in my brain, and I didn't know exactly why until that, which is why I wanted to research a lot more.
Yeah, I think too, finding what worked for you was really important, right? So that you felt good about what you were eating and why you were eating it.
And I think moderation is key. I've had a lot of trouble with moderation. I'm kind of all or nothing to a lot of things. So it's hard to find balance between those two things.
I think I think a lot of people watching this can relate to that. I do too. I mean, I'll have times where I'm really good and I eat very mindful and I know when I'm full and all of that. And then sometimes, depending on what I might be eating, my brain's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I know you're full. I hear you down there, but I'm still going to have it, So yeah.
And your mental health is closely tied with your physical health. So it's important to have a cookie or something that you just want, and it's not necessarily good for you. I just think it's important to take away the good or bad from your vocabulary when it comes to
Mhm.
food,
Yeah.
then you label things as bad and you feel bad about yourself if you eat them or you just won't eat them.
Mhm.
And that's not good for your mental health, which has an effect on your physical health.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you need to find a balance between both.
I started saying, how can I choose food that best supports me with what I would like support with? And that seems to help a lot. Because even as a health coach, sometimes I'll say, well, is it healthy or is it bad for you? You know, and I'm really working on that mindset because, well, does it support my body? Does it support me? And I want to come back to what you said as well. It's not that you don't eat the cookie anymore. It's that you have your threshold for what that cookie is going to be for you is so different. It's
Yeah.
homemade. You know what's in it. You feel confident about having it, and
Yeah.
you're totally fine with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. You have like a wealth of information and knowledge,
Oh,
already. What are your thoughts about your future? Like, what do you want to do?
I don't know. I really like to cook and bake.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I don't know. I'm interested in medicine, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
I'm I feel like I was more certain about my life path earlier, but now that I'm in high school, I feel more confused. I've been taking a lot of classes on like sales and marketing and computer science, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just been good to explore interests.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what school's for. You can figure it out. And
Yeah. So
sometimes things
unfortunately, I don't have a clear answer yet.
yeah. Yeah. But I love that you found something you love to do that's creative and then also, you are looking at the world in such an incredible way. And you know, it's exciting to me that you're doing that. It's very
Yeah.
exciting. Yeah. Yeah. So what are your thoughts then? I think I just realized I told you this is going to go fast. It's 7:27
Yeah, that's
already. I want to make sure we've talked about everything that you wanted to talk about. Let's see. I think we did.
okay.
So what are your thoughts on 2021?
Uh, I hope it's better. I want to go back to school because I haven't actually been to my high school yet,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's my bed is right up here, so I spend like 16 hours in this one room when school is in session.
Yeah.
So it's been nice to get out. I hope the new COVID strain doesn't break out and
Yeah. Yeah.
the vaccine isn't effective against that.
Yeah. Well, I hope you can get back to school too. Those were some
Yeah,
of my best years. And yeah,
yeah,
you should be in school with your friends,
yeah.
doing all that kind of stuff. So okay, well, Lex, it's 7:29 and it was such an honor to have I loved having you here. Thanks for
Yeah, it was
coming
great to
on.
talk with you.
Yeah, and I wish you all the best and yeah, you know, keep talking, help people learn and
Yeah,
yeah, we'll keep this planet really wonderful for you and the next generations to come.
yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah,
Okay, so stay where you are. I'm going to I'll say goodbye to everybody on Facebook. Say bye. And you stay where you are, and I will end the broadcast. Okay, thanks everybody for coming tonight.